Before evil ever had a name, long before the first human set foot on earth, there was only light. In the heavens, infinite goodness reigned. Every angel radiated divine brilliance and worshiped their Creator with perfect reverence. Among them stood one who shined brighter than all the rest, Lucifer. He was the seal of perfection, full of wisdom, flawless in beauty, the most intelligent, the most powerful, the most honored of all celestial beings, God's masterpiece. The first creation shaped by the Creator's own hand, sculpted with intention, adorned with glory. To Lucifer, God gave a majesty unlike any other, and in him was found a brilliance that mirrored the heavens themselves. Lucifer wasn't just admired, he was revered. Other angels looked to him with awe. His voice led the choirs of heaven, his presence lit the skies. He walked with unmatched grace among the seraphim and cherubim. Even Michael, the great warrior of God, honored Lucifer's wisdom. As the morning star, he directed songs of worship, igniting passion and praise with every word. He wasn't merely beautiful, he was captivating. God had not created evil, he had created perfection. But even perfection, when left unchecked, can fall. Over time, pride grew within Lucifer's heart, a hidden fire that slowly consumed him. Blinded by his own brilliance, he began to believe he deserved more. Your heart became proud because of your beauty, the scriptures say. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. What once was his greatest gift became his downfall. His beauty became vanity. His wisdom turned to arrogance, and his voice, once raised in praise, now whispered rebellion. Lucifer longed to rise above his Creator. I will ascend to the heavens, he thought. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. But no ambition, no pride, no glory can rival the Almighty. The heavens trembled. Rebellion shattered the peace like glass falling from the sky. And then, in an instant, it was over. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven, Jesus would later say, cast from paradise, stripped of glory, buried in shadow. The morning star was extinguished. The greatest of angels became the author of darkness. Lucifer's fall left a scar that heaven still remembers. Though light returned, it would never be the same. His story stands as a warning to all creation that even the highest, the most beautiful, the most anointed can fall when pride takes root. But how could this happen? How could perfection become the source of all evil? Before we understand the rebellion, we must understand what was lost. Heaven was a realm of divine structure, each angel crafted with purpose. At the top were the seraphim, beings of pure fire, endlessly crying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty." Beneath them were the cherubim, guardians of sacred knowledge, protectors of divine mysteries. Then came the archangels, messengers like Michael and Gabriel, warriors who carried God's word with sword and flame. And finally, the angels nearest to humanity, our unseen guardians, guiding souls through the unseen battle. Within this perfect order, God wanted to create something extraordinary. From his eternal wisdom, he created Lucifer. He was the embodiment of divine intention, beauty, intellect, authority, and light. His charisma was unmatched, his leadership magnetic. Other angels followed him not out of duty, but devotion. His voice lifted heaven's praises, igniting passion among the stars. Yet behind the brilliance, a shadow grew. God didn't create evil, but he allowed freedom. And in that freedom, Lucifer chose pride. Blinded by his own light, he sought to rival the source. He wanted the throne. He wanted to be God. That desire became his ruin. His fall wasn't just a cosmic event. It was a fracture in the very heart of heaven. Though Lucifer's name echoes across history, Scripture speaks of him only in fragments, symbols, and glimpses. His rebellion is found in scattered verses, pieced together through centuries. This story, while rooted in the Bible, draws also from sacred tradition, from the writings of St. Augustine to the insights of theologians like Father Jose Antonio Fortea. Together, they paint a picture of a being who was once perfect but chose pride over paradise. Lucifer's story is not just about the past, it's about the eternal struggle between light and darkness, humility and pride. It is a reminder that even the most radiant among us can fall, and that true glory is found not in rising above others, but in staying faithful to the one who made us. Lucifer's descent into darkness began not with rebellion, but with a whisper, a fleeting spark of thought. Subtle, almost imperceptible. What if my light could shine brighter, he wondered. What if my glory didn't always have to serve another? These were small questions, born in silence, like seeds dropped in fertile soil. But they took root. Slowly, in the quiet chambers of his mind, they began to grow. He imagined himself exalted, seated upon a throne, receiving praise rather than giving it. With each sacred duty he fulfilled, that inner voice grew bolder, its whisper turning into a murmur. Heaven, still bathed in perfect harmony, carried on. Yet something in Lucifer had shifted. Day by day he became more distant. The angels began to notice. He no longer radiated the same warmth. Gabriel, concerned, approached him. "Lucifer, brother," he said gently, "what burden weighs on your heart? Your light seems restless." Lucifer turned, his gaze drifting to the horizon. "There are things," he replied, "even we cannot fully understand, dear Gabriel." His voice was calm, but something beneath it stirred unease. Gabriel felt a chill, a silence that said more than words ever could. Lucifer began withdrawing. His duties, once performed with divine passion, were now met with apathy. His voice, once the guiding flame of the heavenly choirs, grew silent. His absence felt like a missing star from the night sky. During praise gatherings, where he once stood at the forefront, he now lingered at the edge, watching, detached, his eyes reflecting a strange mixture of pride and resentment. Heaven had laws, but no chains. God had granted every angel free will, the freedom to love and to serve. Even in perfection, choice was sacred. And so, as Lucifer stood on the edge between light and shadow, the tension of his silent struggle rippled through the heavenly host. Some angels, still mesmerized by his brilliance, began to listen with new ears, drawn not by deceit, but by the sheer gravity of his presence. One cherub, concerned, approached him. "Lucifer, do you no longer find joy in our songs?" Lucifer smiled faintly, a chill in his expression. "I've found other pursuits," he said. "Perhaps there is more beyond what we've always known." And then the morning star made his choice. The spark became a flame. The flame became a fire. "I will ascend above the heights of the clouds," he declared. "I will make myself like the Most High." That night, his radiance changed. No longer the light of praise, but the blaze of ambition. And paradise, once serene and untouched, felt the first tremor of rebellion. The angel whose name meant light bringer now bore a different fire. He was no ordinary being, Lucifer had been heaven's beacon, the first to rise, the first to shine, a leader whose presence lit creation's night. His voice had once praised God with unmatched passion, and now that same voice began to speak of a different vision, not with lies, not with deception, but with conviction so powerful, so compelling that others followed. Angels are not naive. They are wise, powerful, formed in holiness. But Lucifer didn't sway them with manipulation. He drew them in with his authority, his passion, and a vision of something more. He didn't speak like a deceiver. He spoke like a prophet, a leader, a king. To witness him was to understand why God had called him perfect. Even his sin couldn't erase the beauty of what God had made. In the book of Job, God himself acknowledges Lucifer as a work of wonder, proof that even rebellion could not undo the craftsmanship of the Creator. Lucifer's fall was not instant. It was a slow eclipse, a masterpiece, unraveling itself. And yet, his strength, his majesty, his brilliance, all remained. Even in sin, he was still the morning star, still powerful. The divine warning. Lucifer ignored God, called Lucifer into the sacred silence. His voice, deep and resonant like an eternal river, flowed with love, not anger, with patience, not judgment. "Lucifer, my son," he began, "you are the seal of perfection, but I sense your heart wandering. Thoughts have begun to grow within you, thoughts that separate you from me." Lucifer stood still, his radiant presence untouched by fear. He looked into the eyes of his Creator and replied, "Father, did you not make me to understand, to explore? My only desire is to comprehend the depths of your work. Is that wrong?" God's sorrow stirred silently. His divine heart, immense and merciful, understood the fragile beauty of the freedom he had gifted. Even in the purest soul, pride could take root. "Your desire to understand is noble," God said gently, "but your thoughts are turning inward. You become enamored with the light I placed within you, yet you forget. That light is not yours. It is a reflection of my love." Lucifer lowered his gaze, but inside him, something began to burn, a fire of wounded pride and confusion. "My Lord," he said, voice taut, "I have never sought anything that wasn't from you. My light. It came from your hand. How could I betray you when I was made by your will?" God looked upon him with infinite tenderness. He saw that Lucifer's love, once pure and burning, had begun to cool. He hadn't sinned yet, but he was drifting. "Son," God said, extending his hand, "remember where all light begins. Do not let shadows blind your heart. Return to me, and your splendor will grow, not apart from me, but with me, in truth." But instead of peace, Lucifer felt a sting, an ache he could not name. Why did he need to be warned? Did God not trust him? He withdrew with a bow, respectful but distant. The distance was not physical, but invisible, growing silently inside him. Time passed. Lucifer's desire to understand, once rooted in awe, became self-consuming. He no longer paused to worship with the same devotion. His voice still led the heavenly choirs, but his heart was no longer in the song. Again, God called to him, "Lucifer, I see the path you tread, and it breaks my heart. Your light is dimming. There is still time. Return to me, and the love within you will bloom anew." But this time, Lucifer did not listen. His heart had hardened. The longing for self-glory now outweighed the joy of divine service. In his mind, he whispered, Don't I deserve more? And still, God did not strike him down. In his infinite patience, he let him go. He had offered all the love, all the mercy, and now only one thing remained. I will not turn from you, God said, his voice soft with sadness, but you are free to choose. God gives a second chance, the tragic choice of Lucifer. God's sorrow was ancient, deeper than words. He knew he was losing his most radiant creation, and yet his mercy remained infinite. Even in Lucifer's fall, God whispered, I will still love him. As Lucifer drifted further away, the heavens grew quiet, holding their breath. A great revelation was drawing near, one that would test the hearts of all angels, but especially Lucifer. Still, God delayed that moment. He gave time, space, a chance for Lucifer to find humility, to rediscover the loyalty in his soul. He spoke again, his voice tender, filled with love. My son, he said, a revelation is coming. When it arrives, the winds will shake the heavens. Your heart will feel like a storm tearing through the skies. Prepare yourself. Root yourself in obedience, for the trial will be great. Lucifer listened with sincerity. He knelt, gazing at the one who created him, and spoke softly, yet with resolve. Father, whatever the test may be, I desire to obey. I cannot promise I'll be perfect, but I swear I want to be faithful. My heart still burns with your love. These words were honest. Lucifer meant them. Somewhere in his soul, he still loved his Creator, but in the shadowed corners of his mind, the seed of pride remained. Quiet, persistent. Am I not the brightest, he thought, the most glorious? God saw it all, and yet he gave another chance. The revelation was postponed. A final space was carved for redemption. Lucifer, God said, this test will not be easy. Even when the wind threatens to carry you away, remember your origin. Remember your essence. Remember that all light flows from me. Lucifer's story mirrored the tale of Eden yet to come. Just as Adam and Eve were given paradise and a single tree to test their freedom, so too was Lucifer given a test. And like the serpent who whispered to Eve, you will be like God, so too did Lucifer listen to a whisper, his own. The whisper that said, there must be more. And so the morning star turned his face from the light that gave him life. He walked toward the shadow, on his own, by his own will. Free will, God's most sacred gift, had become the entry point of downfall. In Eden and in heaven, pride opened the same door. Perfect peace cracked, and heaven, for the first time, knew what it meant to tremble in the presence of shadow. God, in his infinite patience, delayed the moment again and again. In the quiet of eternity, he spoke to Lucifer, not with anger, but with a father's gentleness. My son, he whispered into the angel's soul, the time of revelation draws near. Prepare yourself. It was not a threat. It was a plea, a final invitation to humility. God had loved Lucifer deeply, had crafted him with unparalleled beauty, wisdom, and light. He still believed that love might conquer the pride that had begun to take root in his most radiant creation. But time could wait no longer. This moment would not only test Lucifer, it would test all of heaven. A great gathering was called. The firmament shone with unimaginable brilliance as all the celestial hosts assembled, seraphim and cherubim, archangels and angels of every order. Silence fell like a sacred veil. Heaven held its breath. And then the voice of the Almighty rolled across the cosmos like soft thunder. I will create a new realm, a material universe, declared the Creator, His presence illuminating all. It will reflect my love in new ways. Galaxies shall spin with order, and on one of these worlds, Earth, life will flourish. He unveiled the vision, stars bursting into life, planets dancing in harmony, and among them, Earth, a sanctuary of color and wonder. The angels beheld it in awe, hearts swelling with joy. But God had not finished. On that world, He said, I will create beings in my image, humans made of flesh and spirit, a union of heaven and earth. And more still, His voice grew tender, reverent. I, the Eternal, will become flesh. My Son, the second person of the Trinity, will take on human form. His name shall be Jesus Christ, and in that form you shall worship me. Heaven was stunned. The silence was profound. God, infinite and perfect, was asking His angels not only to revere divine majesty, but to bow before a fragile human face, to worship love made humble. Many angels wept with joy, overwhelmed by the depth of this mystery. The incarnation, a love so deep it would descend into flesh, was beyond understanding. They praised God with tears of wonder. But one remained still, Lucifer. He stood unmoved, his expression distant. The light that once danced within him flickered, dimmed by an unseen storm. Something broke inside Lucifer. The idea of worshiping a being of flesh, of kneeling before a mortal face, was not only foreign to him, it was unbearable. Why, he thought, why would perfection lower itself to the dust? He saw the vision of the crucifixion, the Son of God bleeding for fallen creatures, creatures that would betray Him, kill Him, and yet He would love them still. To Lucifer, this was madness, and worse, betrayal. In the midst of the storm raging within him, a question burst forth like fire. Why not me? For eons he had stood closest to the throne, the brightest, the most beautiful. Had he not been the pinnacle of creation? Why would God choose humanity, not him, for the union of flesh and divinity? That question became bitterness. That bitterness became pride, and that pride became rebellion. The moment came. The angels, overwhelmed by the revelation of Christ, bowed one by one in adoration. But Lucifer did not move. He stood alone, rigid, cold, and silent. His gaze pierced through the glory of the throne like a sword forged from darkness. Then his lips parted. No. The word echoed through eternity, a word never before spoken in defiance. God looked at him not with wrath, but with sorrow, with love still burning in his eternal eyes. But Lucifer took a breath and spoke again, this time louder, colder, final. No. The heavens trembled, the angels recoiled, stunned, and then Lucifer turned to them, his voice calm yet filled with a deadly fire. Do you not see? He said. This is a mistake. He asks us to worship a lesser form, a thing of flesh bound to fall. This is not glory. This is humiliation. His words, laden with dark wisdom, pierced the hearts of many. Some trembled, some listened. Doubt, subtle, poisonous, began to spread. We are beings of light, he continued. We were made for greatness, not to bow before weakness. God has chosen wrongly. Some angels turned their faces in sorrow. Others turned toward Lucifer. And thus the morning star fell, not by force, but by choice. As Lucifer's words echoed through heaven, an unsettling silence fell. The angels, once certain in their loyalty, began to feel the weight of his arguments. The whispers of rebellion swirled like shadows in their hearts. Lucifer's voice, smooth and persuasive, planted seeds of doubt in their minds. His logic was seductive, wrapping around their thoughts like a soft, dangerous poison. Is it right that we should bow to something so low? Why must we, beings of light, worship something made of flesh? Lucifer's words flowed with a natural authority, stirring a dangerous discontent. The angels could not help but listen as his charisma made each sentence sound as though it carried the weight of truth. But just as the tide of rebellion seemed to rise, a voice, strong and unwavering, broke through the murmur. Who is like God? The words came from Archangel Michael, though of lesser rank. His purity shone brighter than any star. It was a simple cry, yet it pierced the air like a blade, cutting through Lucifer's arguments in a single moment. Who is like God? Michael's question was one of humility, a reminder that no being, not even the morning star, could rival the Creator. His words, so simple yet so profound, brought clarity to the angels, reminding them of their true purpose. A quiet yet powerful truth rose in their hearts. Lucifer's gaze snapped toward Michael, eyes burning with icy fury but also surprise. No one had dared challenge him so openly. Michael, standing tall and unwavering, met his gaze. "You are arrogant," Michael's voice thundered, his words sharp like lightning. "Your light, Lucifer, has become a shadow trying to eclipse the Creator. You've placed yourself above God." The sting of Michael's words cut deep, exposing Lucifer's pride, the wound so raw and open that it nearly consumed him. His voice trembled as he responded, "You understand nothing, Michael. Can't you see? This is humiliation, not worship. I, the first in his glory, will not kneel before something so inferior." Michael's gaze softened with sorrow, yet his resolve never wavered. "You've forgotten what love is, Lucifer," he said. "This isn't about humiliation. God becomes flesh for us, and you reject him because you can't bear to be lesser. You've forgotten your place. All you are is a reflection of his glory, and it is your pride that elevates you beyond what you truly are." Those words struck Lucifer like an arrow, his heart seething with bitterness. Michael was right, but Lucifer could not admit it. A deep, uncontainable anger rose within him. Without another word, he turned away, retreating from Michael and the angels, who now looked at him with a mixture of pity and fear. Alone, Lucifer wept, not tears of sorrow, but of pure rage and hatred for the truth that had just been revealed. Lucifer's voice was low, but every word carried a heavy conviction. "Can't you see? God asks the impossible of us. He asks us to renounce who we are, to kneel before something made of clay. Why should we, beings of light, bow before a broken, suffering body? Must we worship a crucified God?" His words echoed through heaven, and doubt began to creep into the minds of many. What if God wasn't who he claimed to be? What if he were just a powerful angel, no different than Lucifer himself? The seed of doubt planted in the hearts of the angels began to grow. Lucifer spoke of dignity and the right to preserve their essence. He promised them freedom, freedom from the need to bow, freedom from subordination. God has given us free will, Lucifer argued. Why not exercise it? Why not be who we truly are? The words burned with a fiery truth, and the angels, especially the brightest and most powerful, began to listen. The thought of independence, of not bowing to anyone, stirred their hearts. Lucifer was offering them something more, something beyond what they had always known. And so, under Lucifer's leadership, the rebel army began to form. It was not the lesser angels who followed him, but the most beautiful and wise, the ones whom God had invested with the greatest power. They were the crown jewels of creation, and now, under Lucifer's influence, their light began to darken. With commanding presence, Lucifer stood before his growing army. "We are the future," he proclaimed. "We are the light that refuses to kneel. If God won't give us the place we deserve, we will take it." His words were filled with unshakable certainty, and the angels felt the weight of his vision. They too began to see the rebellion as the path to freedom, and Lucifer's army grew stronger. Meanwhile, Michael remained steadfast, small but unyielding. He raised his sword high, and his voice rang out once more, "Who is like God?" His simple, humble cry reached those who still doubted, reminding them of the truth that they had once known. As Lucifer's army prepared for war, Michael stood ready to defend the Creator's honor, knowing that his forces were vastly outmatched. Yet his faith in God was his shield, and his loyalty was his weapon. The war between light and shadow had begun, and heaven itself trembled as the first battle of creation's history unfolded. Then came the day when heaven trembled. The final battle erupted, not with a whisper, but with a fury that shook the very foundations of eternity. On one side rose Lucifer, the morning star, now wrapped in darkness. His brilliance, once unmatched, had become a shadow of rebellion. His light, once pure, now twisted into pride and vengeance. Before him stood Michael, the humble archangel, once the least among the host, now ablaze with divine courage. He carried no crown, no glory of his own, only faith, unyielding, immovable, and fierce. Heaven, once a realm of peace, harmony, and song, became a war zone of blazing light and shattering sound. It was no longer silent. It was no longer still. The armies of angels collided like crashing storms. Light clashed against darkness. Loyalty struck at rebellion. Every swing of their radiant swords lit the skies with flashes like falling stars, bursting with divine fire. The fallen ones, those who once danced in the highest heavens, fought with desperate fury. Their beauty was still fearsome, but it was hollow now, laced with rage. Yet the faithful remained unbroken. They fought not for vengeance, not for power, but for love, for truth, for the one who created them. At the front was Michael, wings outstretched, eyes ablaze, and with a voice that thundered through creation, he cried, "Who is like God?" That was his power, not might, not rank, but the unshakable certainty that God alone reigned supreme. And in that truth, his strength grew. It spread like fire through the loyal angels, wrapping them in divine power. They were not alone. They would never be alone. Lucifer, burning with fury, rose high above the battlefield. Darkness poured from his wings, and his voice echoed like a storm. "I was the first. I am the true light." But his words, once majestic, were now empty. They carried no light, no warmth, only bitterness. The light within him had become a lie, a twisted, hollow imitation of what once was. And still, Michael pressed forward. His blade shimmered with purpose. Every step he took pushed back the night. The heavens cried. The stars dimmed. Angels watched with tears in their eyes, feeling the sorrow of what had been lost. The perfect harmony of heaven had been broken, and yet hope remained. The faithful struck with more than weapons. They struck with faith, with loyalty, with love for their Creator. And then came the final moment. Michael, surrounded by the host of heaven, raised his sword. His voice rang out, pure and clear, "By God's power, fall, Lucifer." A silence swept through the battlefield. Then light exploded, darkness was torn apart, and the rebellion shattered. Lucifer, once the most glorious, now became Satan, the adversary, the deceiver. He and his followers, 1/3 of heaven's angels, were cast down, torn from the skies like stars ripped from their constellations. They fell, screaming, into the abyss. And when it was over, heaven fell silent, a deep, aching silence. The angels who remained stood among the ruins of what had been. The songs of eternity were quiet. The golden halls bore the scars of war, but in that silence was also peace. The faithful had prevailed, not through rage, not through violence, but through the strength of righteousness, truth, faith, and love. These eternal virtues had stood unshaken. Heaven would heal in time, but the memory of that day would echo forever. And Michael's cry, "Who is like God?" would become more than a battle cry. It would become a truth etched into the very fabric of the universe, that no power, no pride, no brilliance can stand against the glory of the one who made all things. God is unmatched, and no darkness can ever outshine his light. After the final and cataclysmic battle in heaven, the skies opened, not in welcome, but in righteous judgment. Lucifer, once the radiant morning star, was cast out. He who had walked among the flames of God's glory, whose light once dazzled creation, was now cloaked in shame. Alongside him, 1/3 of heaven's host, those who had followed his rebellion, were hurled into the abyss. They fell like burning stars, torn from the heavens, crashing into a realm of utter desolation. The fall was not just a physical descent, but a spiritual severing. Heaven itself trembled at the weight of such divine justice. The most beautiful of angels had become the most cursed. This exile was not yet the final hell, but a place outside of peace, a shadow realm void of divine presence, a chaos stripped of light and harmony. Here, in this silent expanse of sorrow, Lucifer became Satan. The pain of separation from God, from the source of all light and purpose, was a torment deeper than any wound. Yet in the ruins of his pride, no repentance grew, only fury, only resolve. If he could no longer rise to God's throne, then he would tear it down wherever it took root. His hatred twisted into a new mission. If he could not possess glory, he would defile it. In his rage, Satan's gaze turned toward creation, toward earth, toward humanity, the fragile beings God had promised to make in his image. To Satan, it was the ultimate insult. Mortals, shaped from dust, were now heirs to the love and communion he had once known. So he resolved to corrupt them, to pull them into the same darkness he had chosen. In his mind, if he could not dwell in God's presence, then no one should. Thus, evil was no longer just the absence of good. It became an active, strategic force, driven by pride, vengeance, and envy. From that moment forward, Satan and his fallen angels became architects of temptation and deception. They worked not through open war, but through whispers, illusions and lies, planting seeds of pride, despair, and rebellion in the human soul. Yet even as evil spread its roots, it did so under divine limitation. For though God allowed the rebellion, he never surrendered control. The expulsion of Lucifer was not just punishment, it was justice, a separation that upheld both divine holiness and divine love. The fallen were not destroyed, but neither could they return to the light they had scorned. In this, God's love still gave them existence, but his justice barred them from glory. Lucifer's story did not end in the abyss. His influence stretches through time, present in every spiritual battle waged within the hearts of men. His hatred, his mission to defile what is sacred, lingers in every temptation, yet he is not sovereign. He is not victorious. The God he defied still reigns. His grace still reaches into the darkest places. His love still calls out to every soul. The war that began in heaven continues on earth, but the outcome has never changed. Goodness will triumph, not because it fights harder, but because it is rooted in truth, in love, and in God himself. And so, the cry of Michael still echoes across the ages. Who is like God? A question that remains eternally unanswered, a truth that even Satan cannot deny. There is no one like him. No pride, no hatred, no rebellion will ever overcome the infinite light of the Creator. Lucifer fell, but the glory of God still shines, unchallenged, unshaken, and everlasting. Since his expulsion from heaven, Lucifer, now known as Satan, has pursued a relentless purpose: to corrupt the creation he once beheld in its purity. No longer clothed in light, he roams the shadows of the world, seeking to twist what is good and to sever the bond between Creator and creation. His influence is not always loud or obvious. More often, it is subtle, calculated, a whisper rather than a roar. Throughout Scripture, we find him not merely attacking the weak, but challenging the strong, the faithful, the chosen. He does not strike blindly. He tempts with precision, always aiming for the soul. One of the most profound confrontations is found in the wilderness of the New Testament. After 40 days and nights of fasting, Jesus, weak in body but strong in spirit, is approached by Satan. The deceiver comes not with chains or fury, but with offers. Turn these stones into bread, leap from the temple and prove you are divine, bow down and gain all the kingdoms of the world. Each offer is laced with subtle venom, a promise of glory, power, satisfaction. But behind the words lies Satan's true desire to be worshipped in the place of God. Yet Jesus, firm in faith and clothed in humility, answers not with anger, but with Scripture. His rejection of temptation is not only a personal victory, but a divine declaration that obedience and love for God are greater than any promise of earthly reward. In that moment, the Son of God showed all of humanity how to conquer the darkness with truth, with faith, with unwavering trust in the Father. Another episode, equally revealing, unfolds in the book of Job. There, Satan stands before God, bold and accusatory. Does Job fear God for nothing? He asked, suggesting that human loyalty is shallow, bought by blessings. Satan seeks to unravel the very nature of faith, to prove that love for God is transactional, not true. And so, Job is tested, not with temptation, but with loss, pain, silence. Yet even in his anguish, even in his cries for understanding, Job does not curse God. His story is raw and human. a testimony that real faith endures not only in joy, but in suffering. Satan fails again, defeated not by miracles, but by a man's endurance, by the quiet strength of spiritual perseverance. But Satan's work began long before Job or Jesus. In the very beginning, in Eden, Lucifer struck his first blow against humanity. In the garden designed by God's own hand, he saw an opportunity to drag innocence into the dust. Taking the form of a serpent, deceptive, wise, and lethal, he approached Eve not with violence, but with doubt. Did God really say? That single question planted suspicion where there had been trust. He didn't force the fall, he guided it, gently, strategically, offering the promise of enlightenment, of being like God. In that moment, Adam and Eve fell, and through them, the world was pulled into a shadow. With a single act of deception, Lucifer succeeded in what he had set out to do from the abyss, to fracture the unity between Creator and creation, and to bring the cosmic war into the human heart. Lucifer's influence did not end in Eden. It endures in every temptation that whispers in the silence, in every doubt that creeps into the soul. He is the unseen hand behind pride, envy, despair, behind every moment we are asked to choose between self and surrender. Yet the stories of Scripture never end in defeat. From Eden to the desert, from Job's suffering to Christ's victory, we are reminded again and again. Though evil may challenge, though darkness may rise, good always has the final word. Faith, love, and obedience remain the weapons that darkness cannot overcome. Lucifer's voice still echoes, but it is not the only one. The voice of God still calls, and through every spiritual battle, every trial, that eternal question continues to ring across time and space. Who is like God? The answer remains unchanged. None. Not even the brightest angel, fallen or otherwise, can surpass the glory of the Creator. In the Bible's final book, Revelation, the ultimate fate of Lucifer, now known as Satan, is unveiled with vivid imagery and powerful prophecy. Here, the great cosmic battle that began in heaven finds its final stage on earth. No longer the radiant morning star, Satan is revealed as the great dragon, the ancient serpent, the deceiver who once whispered in Eden and now roars in the last days. His mission is unchanged: to corrupt, to destroy, and to draw creation away from its Creator until the very end. The Apostle John, author of Revelation, shares a vision of the end times, an age of great tribulation where evil reaches its full intensity and the divide between light and darkness becomes undeniable. In this final conflict, Satan is described as the one who leads the whole world astray. His power lies not just in destruction, but in deception. He appears as the mastermind behind the beast and the false prophet, two dark forces that rise to spread chaos, idolatry, and false worship throughout the earth. Through them, Satan attempts to build a kingdom of lies, a counterfeit realm to challenge God's holy reign, seeking once more the glory he lost. As evil floods the world, Revelation shows Satan facing off against Michael and the armies of heaven one final time. This climactic battle is not a new war, but the continuation of the rebellion that began ages ago when Lucifer was first cast out. Now, in the last hour, the conflict reaches its most intense point. But though Satan rages with fury, his time is short. His role as the accuser, the deceiver, the destroyer, comes to its destined end. Revelation does not end in despair. It ends in hope and victory. After the tribulations, after the final stand of evil, Satan is defeated. The great deceiver is seized and thrown into the lake of burning sulfur, a place of eternal separation from God. There, he is rendered powerless, unable to influence or corrupt creation ever again. It is a moment of divine justice, final, irreversible, and absolute. His rebellion is crushed, and with it, the false kingdom he sought to build. This ultimate fall is not just a punishment. It is the full revelation of God's sovereign justice and love. Throughout history, God allowed evil to exist within boundaries, giving humanity the freedom to choose. But when all choices have been made and all hearts revealed, evil is dismantled and righteousness reigns. Satan's downfall becomes the symbol of a failed rebellion, a fading shadow that could never extinguish the light. The role of Lucifer in Revelation is more than just a tale of doom. It is the divine promise of restoration. His defeat assures us that no matter how fierce the battle, goodness and truth will always prevail. Evil may be loud, may seduce, may wound, but its time is limited. The final word belongs to God, and it is a word of redemption. Even today, though Satan still whispers and tempts, his destiny is already written. His power, though fearsome, is fading. And for those who walk in faith, in hope, and in love, the path is clear. Revelation reminds us that the light of God will shine forever, unchallenged, undimmed. The story that began with a fall will end in a triumphant return, a revelation of eternal victory.